Well, that was easy. This is Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every day. We appreciate you guys being with us and part of our community. You can follow us on all platforms, Spotify, Apple Music. There's a podcast app I use, Pocket Cast is the one I use. You can join that one. And on YouTube. Best way for you to support the show is on YouTube. Hit the subscribe and like button, and you turn on notifications, and you can join the show live and join folks that hang out with us every day here in the chat. Today's episode is brought to you by SweatBlock. If you or someone you love is experiencing embarrassing sweater odor, try SweatBlock. Save 20% with promo code LOCKEDON at sweatblock.com. Also available on Amazon. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, joined by Adam Mares. He's director of content over at DNVR. You can follow his work at Adam_Mares and check out all the awesome stuff at DNVR and become a DNVR diehard. He's also the producer and director of his documentary on basketball in Serbia. And if you have not yet, you should go check that out. It's absolutely phenomenal. You will learn something. You will enjoy it. Go find it on YouTube. Adam, how are you this morning?
I'm good. I didn't get tons of sleep, so I'm tired, but I'm good.
Yeah, I think the Nuggets slept well because they didn't have to do much work this week. Between Monday and Wednesday, pretty light work for the old Nuggets, even though the starters did have to come back in. No, I'm sorry. Even though the starters came back in, had to is a different question in the second game versus the Houston Rockets.
Actually, we talk about that. Put a pin in that. I want to come back to that at the end.
Yeah. So, look, I talk a lot about how you get through the NBA regular season, and you got to have two parallel paths. The keys to winning in the NBA regular season genuinely are not the same as preparing for the playoffs. And some teams take a very binary approach to that, in that they only do one or the other. It's either like we want to really have a great regular season, but they don't necessarily prepare themselves for the playoffs. And some teams are so focused on the playoffs that it sacrifices some regular season wins. The best teams prepare on both levels. One of the keys to getting through the regular season is, as I always talk about, you got to win your home games. You got to win games versus teams under 500. And the Nuggets did that this week, winning 2 games at home versus teams under 500 in the Houston Rockets, who they played really well in the first half. In the first half of the game on Monday, we talked about, they played really well, shared the ball. The Nuggets' attention to detail was lacking. Really well. And pretty much from then on out, the Nuggets absolutely just smacked them the way that a team in their class should do versus a team in the Rockets class.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was true of the third quarter of the last game, which kind of led to an extended rest for the starters. Aaron Gordon just playing 14 minutes last game. And then in this one, it was the first quarter. Denver outscores them 44-24. And then the second quarter, 30-23. The game was over at halftime. It was really just a formality from there. Like, even Denver had bad stretches in this one, but the game never felt like it was going to get close. So it was a dominant performance. If you ask me my big takeaway from it, or what are some of the big takeaways, for me, Jamal Murray, just having 2 of the best games of his season back to back. You know, in this one, only 26 points. He had 31 in the first one. But I mean, again, this game had no competitiveness to it. He had 26 easy points. He could have had 35, it felt like. And so for me, the Jamal Murray sort of ascension back to looking like he used to, that's the most exciting part. And now he's going to get a big test against a guy who traditionally has kind of given him the business in Trae Young.
So it was funny. I was on the NBA bet stream last night for this game sponsored by DraftKings, and it was a fun game. I had a lot of fun. I had Aaron Gordon over points, rebounds, and assists, and that cashed to the third. I had Nuggets minus 11.5.
That was a great bet, by the way. Aaron Gordon not playing a ton of minutes. Like, you know, players like the easy game, and when you don't get to play in it, it's like, all right, come on. I'm gonna go big this next one.
Yeah, and like, here's the thing. I don't mind players doing a little bit of numbered of not chasing, just like playing for numbers. Like, I don't mind that at all.
I don't even think he was. I just think it's an easy game, and he played hard.
Yeah, and he played really well. I thought he played great too. Aaron's having a phenomenal season, and I haven't really appreciated enough how good Aaron Gordon's been. Thought he was great, but what was interesting is it's like, okay, so it's like 20. Nikola goes out, and I'm like, all right, they won the bench minutes last time. Surely they won't. And I'll be really honest with you, Adam. I live bet at the half plus 20.5 on the Rockets because I thought that Bones would play. And I honestly thought they would probably lose those minutes because
yeah.
Bones has had some troubles, and Bones is he's rusty and all these types of things. Bones doesn't play, and we can talk about that. But again, another really good performance by the bench. I thought that like Ish Smith. Somebody asked me on Twitter. They're like, Matt, you were like all over the Ish thing. You hyped him up last year, even before we got him. You talked about how good he was going to be. But did you really think that he was going to be this good defensively? I have no idea where this defense from Ish came from. I've never seen this in his career. It's not just the blocks. Like, he had deflections and steals last night. He's up into guys. Like,
I'm curious. Like, we've seen this with Jeff Green and really other veterans in the past where early on in a season, they give you a ton of energy and then they kind of settle into the like, all right, marathon, look, whatever. And I wonder if that's where we're at with Ish because he's flying around out there. Like, he's just playing so hard on the defensive end.
And like that lob to DJ was terrific. I want to dedicate a few minutes to one play in particular. If you had asked me if I would ever see Vlatko Cancar dunk the ball from as far out as he did, I would have bet you any amount of money no. That was an incredible dunk. That was
the craziest part of it, Matt, because he dunks from one step. I honestly, after the game, they were talking about it was from the MJ spot, and I'm like, it wasn't quite there. I went back and looked. It kind of is the exact spot of the MJ dunk. Like, it kind of actually is. The funniest part about that dunk is that Vlatko legitimately didn't seem to notice that he did it. Like, he runs back on defense like nothing, and then after the game, he was asked about it, and he was like, I just went up to dunk. I didn't want to get blocked. You're like, dude, what?
Yeah. That was. I thought he was going to short it. Like, I was worried he was going to hit the rim and fall.
I thought he was going to lay it up or something, like, finger roll or something. I don't know, man. It was.
And then he got there. Air Vlatko.
I will say this. Vlatko was not great in the last game.
It was really good this one.
But he bounced back, and now it's 4 out of the last 5 performances where I would be giving him an A grade. Like, not just like, oh, he was good, B, whatever. I think he has an A grade in 4 of the last 5 games. The last wouldn't be in the outlier. And for a role player, when you have, great games 4 out of 5 times, that's pretty unique. Not a lot of role players are great 4 out of 5 games.
One of the things that I was thinking about was my skepticism and kind of like, okay, about Vlatko. And I realized how dumb it is. And you want to know why it's dumb, Adam? Because I watched the Miami Heat pluck these guys out of nowhere. And I'm just like, oh, they must be good. And like, oh, who's actually really good? And then because it's the Nuggets and it's like a different kind of team and a different coach, honestly, and a different structure, I'm like, well, okay, we'll see if these guys are any good. And it's like, no, like these guys can contribute. Like, these are NBA players. These guys are really good. And Vlatko's been really good the last couple of games. Like, he's playing the best basketball in his career.
Two-way player. Like, he had a 3, and I'm doing an episode of The List later on today. He had a 3 in the corner last game, like drifting to the corner. You have to always talk about shooting on movement. He catches the ball in the corner with his momentum carrying him out of bounds, and he nails it. Nothing but net. It was so pure. And now he's above 40%. I think he's at 44% on the season. I know it's low volume, but he's just been so solid, so reliable. And to your point about the Miami Heat, that's a good one. I honestly think that the NBA, you've got your superstars, and it's really hard to be that. And you need to have the whole package, and you have to have all these different things. Then you have your top-level role players like your Bruce Browns and your KCPs, and you have to be elite at something, right? Elite shooter, elite defense, maybe 2 things you have to be elite at. When you get to the Vlatko level of player, which are usually your 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th guys, those guys need to be solid. They need to, they don't have to pop. And so when you start talking about your Max Struses or whoever else it is that you're referencing on Miami, I just think there's a lot of those guys. The hard part is getting people that are trying to be that guy, not trying to be something else or trying to like, hey, this is a stepping stone to being the star, being whatever. And Vlatko to me just represents that. He's solid. He does a lot of things okay or good. doesn't make a lot of mistakes. And then he has these like physical attributes that are so shocking, but actually very effective. I mean, he's huge, he's enormous. And he's actually, we talk about Zeke Naji being mobile for his size. Vlatko is just as mobile, if not more, at the same size.
Yeah, moves his feet. Good lateral stuff. Really impressive stuff. Some guys want to help a team win, and some guys want to put a lot of numbers in Orlando. Let's take a break, and we'll come back, and we'll talk about a number of other things. We'll get into the question of whether the starters should have come back and more. We'll talk about that when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. But first, I want to tell you about SweatBlock. So it's definitely winter in Colorado, and it has come in like a lion. We'll see if it exits like a lamb, but it's been cold here, especially in NoCo, and that means layers. That means you got your t-shirt, you got your hoodie, you got your coat and all that. It keeps you warm on the inside, but that can also lead to unpleasant and embarrassing sweat, which means if you were like, oh, I'm feeling kind of hot, you take off that hoodie and all of a sudden you're like, oh no, I can feel the dampness. You don't want to deal with that. That's why you got to use SweatBlock. It gets rid of all those problems and saves you from embarrassment every single time because it lasts for a full week. It gives you the confidence to wear what you want without embarrassing sweat. They were featured and tested on the Rachel Ray Show by firefighters. If you or someone you love is experiencing embarrassing sweat or odor, try SweatBlock. Save 20% with promo code LOCKEDON at sweatblock.com. Also available on Amazon. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets, thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. I appreciate you guys being with us and making us your first listen. Make your second listen Locked On Sports Today. All the biggest stories in sports with insight and expert analysis from our local host of experts across the network. Check it out, Locked On Sports Today, wherever you get podcasts. All right, second segment here with Adam Mares breaking down the Nuggets' comfortable win versus the Houston Rockets. Let's start with the starters question. It was a little unnecessary. I didn't think it was... I was a little surprised at the reaction, which I thought was a little bit extreme. He didn't need to put them back in. I will also say, though, that they played so few minutes on Monday that this was still like a very light work game for the Nuggets starters, right? This one comes in and Jokic still only plays 28 minutes. Jamal plays 31. Bruce has been on the high side of minutes, and that maybe is a little bit of a cause for concern at 34. But in general, Bruce is the only guy to play over 32 minutes in this game, and it was kind of the same on Monday. So I get why, especially because he just, for whatever reason, that run, it wasn't even a run is my problem. I'll say this for Malone, you want coaches to be dedicated to process. They didn't really chip away at the lead. Because I was sitting there on that bet stream talking about look, if this gets to 17, he's going to have to put the starters back in. Then you're in trouble. It never got there. It was still at 20. But the process was bad. You could tell the Nuggets weren't playing as well. And so Malone felt like he had to go back to the starters. I go back and forth on if that's enough. Part of me is look, man, they're definitely screwing around at this point. You can watch the team and be like, they're screwing around. I also kind of get it from the perspective of, and if you screw around versus NBA teams, all of a sudden this can get dangerous. I just thought that he pulled it a little early for where they were at in the game.
I agree with you. And when I went back and rewatched that stint, I didn't even think it was that bad. Had Denver definitely taken their foot off the gas pedal and lost focus? Absolutely. But it wasn't like they were shooting turnaround jumpers and throwing passes to people's feet or whatever. It was just kind of a little bit of a lack of urgency, which is, to me, understandable when you're up, checks notes, 30 points. It's understandable that a team might coast through to the finish line. And here's the thing I wonder, Matt, because the Nuggets have lost focus. So maybe Malone, and he has this is one of those things where I kind of trust him to know better than you or I, because he actually is around the team and knows, is this a thing that needs to be addressed or not? But I will say, I don't know that it translates perfectly. Did you focus against the Houston Rockets in a fourth quarter when you're up 30 versus will you focus against, say, the Pelicans in quarter number 2? I don't know if this leads to that, and if a lack of focus is building bad habits for that. I just think a team naturally up 30 against a bad team is, how much time's left in this game?
Yeah.
I will say this. The other part of it is, I wish Bones would have played last night. Because you do need to start the process. If he is going to play, you need the process of getting him back and just getting him reps. And last night would have been the to me, felt like a perfect spot to say, hey, get out there. We're up 30.
Yep.
Let's see what you look like. You could look terrible, but it doesn't matter. This is the perfect spot to just get you 8 minutes to get your lungs back a little bit, your timing back.
I will say this. I think that not just Malone, I think coaches in general separate from us or media or analysts or fans or whatever in that regard, in part because if Bones comes in and they go on an 8-0 run, right? Does the confidence get a little rattled? Is it more harmful than helpful, especially when, they felt like his conditioning just wasn't there? He was I will say this, he was pretty easy on Bones after the game, right? Like his commentary was about basically like, look, the kid's been through the ringer. Like he
acted like he was protecting him. I mean, it sounded more like it was for Bones' sake that he didn't put him in. So again, maybe he knows more than we do. But clearly he knows more than we do on this instance.
Yeah. And I think I'll say I definitely think Christian Braun should have played more. Like Bruce Brown shouldn't be playing 35 minutes and Christian Braun only playing in garbage time. And we don't know what the reason is for Brown being in the doghouse. My experience
might not be in the doghouse. It might just be Malone. Honestly, I don't think he's mad at Brown. I think he's just playing other guys.
Yeah, I'm just surprised because usually when a guy gets into the circle of trust, you usually have to do something to get out of it. I guess in my experience, do we remember guys kind of fading out like this? Because that hasn't been my experience with Malone. It's usually like if you work your way in, then you're in until you do something to put yourself out. And like, look. I'll just say it, like, this is not Malone specific. This literally is every single coach in the league. Every single one has guys that you're like, why don't they play more? And you're not able to find a reason. This is not Malone specific.
Well, you also know this one. This is actually your theory that I have seen more and more the longer I cover the league. Coaches have more power over rookies than anyone else, than the players at any other point of their career. And this could just be as simple as, you're doing great, but I want you to be perfect. And this is the only year where I can sort of demand that. Next year, I can demand 90% perfection. After that, 80% perfection. And eventually, I can't demand anything. I can just hope that you do what I've asked you to do.
Want to give a shout out to DeAndre Jordan first play last night. Again, so I think this is like something that we're starting to see. And I want to throw this one at you and see what you think about it. Throw it on the stoop. We'll see if the cat licks it up. DeAndre Jordan may be the perfect backup center for the games versus average to sub 500 opponents to get you through the regular season. And he's just going to look terrible when you face quality opponents. Does that make sense? Like, what if that's like the kind of look that
it's entirely possible. I mean, look, they smacked him, right? So it's entirely possible that that's what's happened. In fact, I think it's kind of a good theory. Players like that. I don't know how valuable that is, to be honest. Like, did Denver need the perfect backup center last night in order to win? I will say he played great. And more importantly, I think the thing that I walk away from with that game is, Vlatko played alongside. We've wondered, we've seen Vlatko Zeke, and it looked good. So what does it look like when you play Vlatko DeAndre? It looked good as well. So part of me thinks it's more evidence that you have combos in your 4-5 off the bench that maybe work together. But the other thing, Matt, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's just funny because the way that I think the NBA, trying to think of the word for it. For people in the league, I'll just say that. The way they kind of think about it is it's what's called minutes eating, right? It's just eating minutes.
Yeah.
And I'll say this. There was a disastrous free agency signing that I got pushback from a front office executive on this summer for a center, and because I said the contract was horrible. And one of their responses to me was like, look, we're not signing him to be like our starter in the playoffs. We just want him to eat some regular season minutes. That person's now no longer in the rotation, but still, I think that's kind of the idea, right? Is very and your approach is you're like, yeah, but you're working towards a process where everybody's functioning well. And honestly, I think that you're fair on that because I think that's what the best teams in the league do. I don't think the Boston Celtics have minutes eaters. I don't think the Phoenix Suns have minutes eaters. Bismack is a legitimate part of the rotation.
Those two teams seem to run 10 deep of guys that you're like, wow, there's a lot of guys and they all fit and everything makes sense. But maybe that doesn't matter. I will say maybe it doesn't matter this time of year Like you want to, how long does it take to build a rotation chemistry? It's probably 20 games. Yeah. So if that happens now or later or whatever, we'll see. I do want to put this one point in here though, Matt. We have to couch every single take. The Nuggets are on a run. Last year at Denver, at Houston, Nuggets win 124-111. They actually had 2 20-point wins against Houston last year. One close one, but 2 20-point wins. Facu Campazzo, 22 points, 12 assists, 5 steals, 2 blocks, 4 rebounds, 7 of 11 shooting, and a plus 19. Sometimes you just play a bad team and everyone looks good.
Yep. And I get that that's been your your feelings since half of game 1 of the set. You've just basically been like, oh, these guys suck. And they
just can't guard anyone, man.
Yeah, they're terrible. The only thing I'll say is
last year
these games make up a bigger percentage of the NBA regular season than you think. And the reason I think it's meaningful is because a lot of teams use these games to sharpen what they do. A lot of these teams use these games to make their numbers look good, right? Like the Boston Celtics beat the Hornets by 40 or whatever. To me, and I've said this, I think these games are more important. Handle your business and get through the regular season while building your processes and your habits, as Ryan Blackburn says, for pursuit of a championship. Let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk about the upcoming game set. We're going to talk a little bit about around the league about the Boston Celtics, actually, and what they're doing, and we'll talk about Phoenix a little bit more. We'll talk about those things when we come back here on Locked On Nuggets. But first, I've got to tell you about ExpressVPN. So we all know how ExpressVPN protects your privacy and security online, right? But here's something you might not know. You can also use ExpressVPN to unlock movies and shows that are only available in other countries. Maybe you've run out of stuff to watch on Netflix, and this will change your world. They allow you to binge The Office on UK on Netflix. It's simple to do. Just sign into Netflix, fire up ExpressVPN, change your location to UK, refresh Netflix, and that's it. They let you control where you want sites to think you're located, so you can choose from almost 100 different countries. So just imagine all the libraries that you can go through. But it's not just Netflix. ExpressVPN works with any streaming service: Hulu, BBC iPlayer, YouTube, you name it. There are hundreds of VPNs out there, but the reason I use ExpressVPN to watch shows is because it's ridiculously fast. There's never any buffering or lag, and you can stream in HD no problem. ExpressVPN also works on all your devices: phones, media consoles, smart TVs, and more, so you can watch what you want on the big screen or on the go. Great note! It theoretically works on certain sports platforms that have certain games of certain teams. That works theoretically. So if you want to get access to hundreds of new shows, go to expressvpn.com/lockedon right now, and you can get an extra 3 months of ExpressVPN for free. That's expressvpn.com/lockedon. expressvpn.com/lockedon to learn more. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Glad to have you with us on Thursday. Get you set for the rest of the week. Normal show tomorrow, and then we'll do a weekend recap show after the Hawks game, because I'm really interested to see how that Hawks game go. Adam, sometimes in my recollection, I'll have to look back. In my recollection, sometimes they smash the Hawks, and sometimes they get smashed by the Hawks, and it's always kind of one or the other. That's my recollection. Do you remember anything?
In Atlanta, if you actually look at the numbers, Denver's win percentage as a franchise in Atlanta is like horrendous. They're like 8-55 or something all time in Atlanta. So I'll take that for what you will. Historical precedent sometimes can be misleading.
It's the exact elevation difference. That's the problem. There's something going from Mile High to Atlanta's specific, not sea level, just Atlanta's specific is difficult. So we were talking about kind of the fact that the Rockets are bad, and they are bad, and they were playing better, which is what was kind of interesting. Is that was a very much like they're really bad. By the way, small thing, it was killing me last night, and not just because I had over 2.5 assists on Şengün last night. Did you notice Jalen Green looking him off in the pinch post every single time? Did you notice that?
I noticed Jalen Green looking off at everybody. Jalen Green, I am not a fan, man. I think here's the part that sucks.
Be careful. I'm warning. I don't want Rockets fans to cut they're the worst about going into mentions. I don't want to cause. I already had David Ramil get in trouble with Rockets fans for saying that he thinks Jalen Green's going to be a bench guy.
I mean, he plays like a bench guy. He plays like a sixth man, which is like you make bad decisions, but you're a really good scorer. So we'll put you around some whatever. And I hate that because I love individual skill. This is why, like, I'm, as a basketball fan, an appreciator of Kyrie Irving's talent. I hate the way he employs that talent, but I love, like, the fact that I know how hard it is to be good at footwork, this and that. Jalen Green is so quick. He's got great footwork. He's got a great jumper. He has all the tools to be a great player. He doesn't seem to have any of the will to do the things that would make him a great player. So yes, to me, he looks like a super Jordan Clarkson, or really a Jordan Clarkson. And I just hate, and I'm with you. I hate that.
The common thought from Rockets fans, understandably, because they love their guy, is that the problem is coaching. And I think it's a fair, like, at this point, I have to say, like, it's a fair question. So
look, it's different coaches for different people. Like, somebody, if there is somebody out there that can get through to Jalen Green, but I always will think about something Tim Conley told me when he was talking about Will Barton in a positive way. He said that players have to learn that a lot of players come in and they need the perfect situation and they're not willing to change, and they just are waiting for somebody or some situation that fits their thing. And it's like, nobody succeeds that way, or very few people do. And this is the thing with Jalen Green. Does he have the wrong coach? Maybe is not getting through to him, whatever. But there's an opportunity for him to be a great player, and I just don't see him rowing in that direction. And I hate it. Nothing I hate more than wasted talent. Drives me nuts.
Let's talk a little bit about, like, just around the league and about the great teams and how Denver's stacking up. So the Boston Celtics, I think, are a fascinating team right now, and I've studied them a lot over the last week. I'm writing a column for Action Network for tomorrow on them. I did a podcast on Monday talking a lot about them. They're fascinating, and again, what's really crazy about them: Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are not shooting well from three. If I told you that, you would be like, well, their record's probably not very good, because the team was not good offensively last year. They haven't been great offensively the last 5 years. Jaylen Brown is shooting 34% from three. Jason Tatum is shooting 37% from three, which is good, but not awesome. Like, as a comparison point, Marcus Smart is shooting better from three than Jaylen Brown. And yet, this team is absolutely just like, they're an offensive juggernaut. They can't get stops. Like, I don't know what to make of this boss. The conversation that you and I've always had about how I think that each year a team is a different organism. It has never been more evident than so far with the Boston Celtics, who can't get a stop at all, that allowed the Miami Heat to absolutely tear them up offensively last night without Jimmy Butler. And the Heat are a miserable offensive team. But it doesn't matter, because the Celtics just put up a ridiculous points per possession mark again. And trying to figure out whether you should believe that this is going to sustain itself or not is to me, it is the question in the NBA right now. Because if the Celtics are what their resume says they are, if they are what the Celtics have told us they are, then they are a juggernaut that is the best team in the league by margin. I just don't know if I believe it.
They're shooting the ball just so ridiculously well. The thing that I wonder, and this is what I brought up to you when we were preparing for the segment, they had the best coach in the NBA, and Brad Stevens. Maybe he wasn't the best coach, but he was hailed as one of them at a certain point. They get the new best coach in the NBA in Ime. Now they have a new best coach in Mazzulla, who, by the way, is really good. Like, you're looking at some of the numbers. One of the critiques of Ime from the players, at least some of the things that were reported, was that he's too controlling. Puts everybody in a box, and you have to do this, this, and this. This year, there's a lot more free flowing. There's a lot more I was listening to the Scalabrine pod. He was really talking about this. Just more teaching the principles and less calling the plays and doing this or that. And the players have responded really well to it. And it makes me wonder, one, is coaching less important? Are they just on a hot streak and this is going to regress to the mean and real coaching impact happens in the playoffs, which is probably true to at least some extent? Or is this just they got lucky and now they have a third great coach, and maybe it's the when people talk about Mark Jackson, Steve Kerr, it's always this is the Mark Jackson and we need our Steve Kerr. One of the things that's lost on that is Mark Jackson brought something to the table, whether you like him or not, brought something that built a foundation in them, but was incomplete. Then you get a new coach and brings even more to it. And maybe that's what's happened in Boston. Maybe they just have had three coaches that each taught a new layer to it. And they're the result of three great coaches adding a new piece to the system that's bringing them to new levels. These are the things I think about, because that team, to me, the numbers, I haven't watched them enough to say. You've watched them more than I have. But the numbers say that they are a juggernaut and that they are like this offense. started at a 120 or whatever, and it's going up over the last 2 weeks. They're like 135 offensive rating. These numbers are insane.
They have the best offensive rating in NBA history currently. Now, of the top 20 teams, all but one, the 1987 Lakers, have been in the last 4 seasons. I'm sorry, 5, 2017. It's crazy. Yeah, there's inflation here. Like there's inflation.
There's inflation. But this is outside of inflation, though, man.
Yes. Because Jared Dubin over at 538 actually posted a chart that does era adjusted, and they're still the third best offense of all time, behind like the 2016 Warriors and the Bulls 72 win team. Like that's what they're on pace for, right? I'll just say here's my problem. There is a component here where you have to look at what the weapons are. I'm a big believer in systems, right? But there's a reason why San Antonio doesn't pop on these lists. Okay? On some level, I need to be able to look at it and go like, oh yeah, that team was stacked. Like look at the offensive firepower they had. If you look at the Warriors, yeah, they had the best shooter of all time and arguably like a top 5, maybe. I used to think Clay was like the second best shooter of all time, right? And then they had all these weapons.
He got injured. He got old and he got injured. Like he still might be the second best shooter of all time.
Yeah. He's not talked about that. As such, I'm always curious why people don't talk about Klay Thompson. Is like, to me, it's like Steph, Klay, and then Ray Allen. But like Bulls, right? Kerr, like Jordan, Pippen, obviously, but also Kerr and all these different weapons. If we look at some of the other great teams, the Showtime Lakers, I look at the Boston Celtics and I'm like, yeah, Jason Tatum's amazing. Top 5 player in the league right now. Jaylen Brown's like really, 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 really good. Al Horford is like 35, and like Derek White, right? Sam Hauser.
Sam Hauser.
Yeah, I'm serious.
He's the number one. Jokic is the number 2 offensive rated player, like offensive rating. When he's on the court, what's your offensive rating? It's Jokic. Which, by the way, some interesting context to this, right? Part of what makes the Celtics great is all of their guys are good. Like they don't drop off from starters to bench and blend. They're all at that 120 offensive rating. Jokic on the court, Nuggets 125. They're higher than all of them except for Sam Hauser. Isn't that wild, though? Doesn't that mean something, Matt? That we're talking about the Celtics team as being historic, and it is, but none of the individual guys peak above what Jokic is peaking above when he's on the court. That's some important context here, too.
Yeah. So I'll just say, like, I don't necessarily, I'm not excluding the Celtics, right? I'm not like, oh, they're not going to win the title. They can win the title. Absolutely. I can't get to, they are a juggernaut. I will tell you.
You don't think, juggernaut implies an inevitability of winning.
Yeah.
But you do think that they're the best team in basketball?
I think they have been, and so are currently the best team in basketball.
Okay. I mean, that's fair. It's early. Like to have any other take, I think was reckless. But
look, if they do this by the end of the season, I will have no choice but to be like, they're going to win.
I will say this: when we were tiering teams, if you asked me this 2 weeks ago, it was like Milwaukee and Boston and Phoenix are in a tier, and then Denver's at the top of the next tier, whatever. If you ask me now, I think Boston's is tier 1. Like they kind of exist in their own tier. And maybe I would put Phoenix there as well, but Phoenix has been hurt. Their problem is that we haven't actually seen a good enough, like a healthy enough version of them. But to me,
but here's the thing:
in their own tier.
So this gets back into the conversation of the regular season versus the playoffs, like we talked about, right? Like this is kind of the thing is, I agree with you on a regular season performance. It's the Celtics, and then it's everybody else, right? The Bucks under the hood, as I say, in terms of the numbers, are not elite.
Yeah, they also haven't been healthy. The Bucks. Yeah. This is the thing is the Bucks might be a sleeping giant as well.
Yeah, the Bucks, and that's the thing is like if you're the Bucks, do you respect the Celtics? For sure. Are you scared of them? No. Right? Like if it's Celtics Bucks, I'm probably betting Bucks. Like I think the Bucks win that series. They should have won last year. And the question is,
so funny in that way, man. Like it does come down to, do you have a solve for the other team's best punch? And like the other team's best punch is Giannis. Do they have a solve for that? They might though. They have a lot of.
They got a really great team. Yeah. Phoenix, I actually think after looking at some things this morning from a regular season perspective is even better than I thought. So the Suns right now are 5th. The Suns are the team that Michael Malone wants the Nuggets to be. I'll just tell you that right now. They're third in adjusted net rating at dunks and threes with the 5th best offense and the 7th best defense. Like that's what he wants.
And they've done it shorthanded, man. Like they have another level I think they can get to as well.
Booker was phenomenal last night. Like that efficiency was absolutely absurd.
Last year, man, people wanted to put Booker in the MVP conversation. I thought it was absolutely ridiculous. Like, come on, man. But this year, I got to say, them going shorthanded for the last little bit and him elevating and playing that well, it's early. Like, there's a lot of time left, and he's never carried a team the way, say a Luke or Giannis, whatever. But and I don't know how you contextualize that, but I will say I'll give him the credit now. I think he should probably be in that conversation.
You're not baiting me into an MVP conversation after you said last night how much you hate the MVP conversation.
I do. I'm just trying to give. It's less about the MVP conversation and more about
just giving credit.
I've never felt like Booker was a guy that does all of the things it takes to carry a team. He's a great player, and I'm looking at it now and I'm going, you know what? That team is staying afloat with him as the option 1 and 2, and that's pretty impressive.
So I'll say this: I'm mad that I didn't pick up on the Nuggets defensive rating and wins. Like I'm mad that I wasn't the one to find that. That's the kind of thing that I should be on top of.
Who found it?
Malone was the first one to bring it to the conversation, and then Swipa was tweeting about it yesterday. And so
I don't know this stat, so I missed it. So walk me through it. I'm looking it up right now as you talk.
So basically, when they lose, they are the worst defense in the league.
Yeah.
And in wins, they're fine. They're 17th, but in the fourth quarter overall this season, they're phenomenal.
Yeah, this is to me is the Nuggets, and I don't know how to contextualize this, Matt. They can't play defense. I think it's proven now that they cannot be a great defensive team for 4 quarters, 82 games a year. I will not ever predict that they will do that in the Jokic era. And I don't know how important that is. I think it might be actually important. I'm not trying to discount it. I think it might actually be important because there's something about can you defend easy, and there's something about can you defend hard. And I think the Nuggets can defend hard. Like, hey, it's time to get serious. But good teams seem to be able to score easy, seem to be able to defend easy. And I don't think Denver could defend easy.
And I think one of the interesting questions there is, can you afford it? Like, it's great if you get into clutch time and you're able to clamp down. You got to get there. If you're in Phoenix for game 2, right, and you lost game 1 close, if you want to win that game 2, your second quarter defense is going to matter.
But I think Denver can do that. Like, again, it's a focus thing. This is what I'm talking. I don't think it's an energy thing. I think Denver can defend for 16 games. But to defend for 82 games, you have to be able to – it's the same with offense. You have to be able to score easy. You can't always be executing perfectly, locked in, all of those things. Like, over 82 games, sometimes you just need KD making jumpers or Jokic hitting floaters. Denver scores easy. They can have a bad offensive process and a good offensive night. Denver can't have a bad defensive process and have a good defensive night. Some teams can.
The other thing, and this is brought by Evan, which is this is the other thing that Malone brought up. I prefer the phrase is we are the number 1 worst defensive team when we lose. That's the other thing is they're actually 29th now. The Spurs lapped them last night with another phenomenal tank performance. But that's
you're wrong.
This does get into a lot of why I have a lot of confidence in Denver. It's, hey, if you don't play defense like complete schmucks and you don't turn the ball over, you're going to win 90% of the time.
Denver's defensive rating is way worse than anybody. They're 30th in losses, 126.2. Way worse than anyone else.
I've got it at oh, yeah, right. I'm sorry. That is correct. I've got
way worse. It's not even close.
Yeah. You're right. So,
oof.
Yeah. Like,
that's
again,
hilarious.
If
I don't know what that means though.
If you control the things that you can control, I mean, it means that the Jazz and Blazers blew them out as part of it, and the Mavs in the first game. But again, if you when the Nuggets control the things that they can control, this team's elite. And honestly, Adam, I'll be real here. As for as much pressure as there seems to constantly be from the fan base, I think this is a really good spot to be in. Like, I think you want to show that, like, yeah, no, the Nuggets are there, right? They're not number 1 in the West by a wide margin. Because I will tell you with Boston, I have started to make noise about this. I think they're peaking too early. I just do.
They'll get the Rob Will bump when he comes back. Yeah, I don't know. It's possible. It's possible. Again, they do things easy, and that's the part to me that's just so impressive. They're also shooting really hot, or maybe they're just really good at shooting. I don't know.
Yeah, look, I just really believe in the peaking thing, and you can't really even control it because I can't be like, you should miss more shots and be bad. Like that's
true. Yeah.
right. You can't do anything about it. It's just that I saw the Jazz do this 2 years ago with the best record in the league, the best offense, the best net rating, and everyone be like, look, I'm just saying the numbers say the Jazz is the best team. And then last year was the exact same thing where it was, look, I'm just saying all the numbers say the Phoenix is the best team. Both out in the second round. Like, I don't know.
The Phoenix one to me is much better comp than Utah.
Mm-hmm.
Boston was in the finals last year. That's not something Utah had done. Like 2 years ago, Utah was coming off of a 3-1 collapse in the bubble. Yep. So like they had a precedent of choking. Boston made it to the finals and they lost because Steph Curry had a historic game 4. Like they very easily in an alternate universe could have won last year's NBA finals.
Turnovers. They had turnover issues.
And but I'm saying the margins lost them that series, not their like own inability to be good.
Yeah, and it wasn't like a series where everyone's like, "Oh yeah, they're definitely like this is not."
They're just they're not good enough to win. They just didn't win. Yeah. They didn't get it done, and now they're here looking like they're on a mission and even more motivated. I'm just very impressed with them. The numbers are insane. You're right. It's funny because to say that Brian Scalabrine on that low pass said they're not going to regress. He thinks they're going to get better, and to me, that's the way crazier take than that they will regress. Like that they're going to play at a historically great, and not just by a little bit, by a lot of it. That for the rest of the season is insane. But hey, man, we're 21 games in. It's no small sample size.
All right. So the Nuggets take on the Hawks on Friday, and then the Pelicans. Is that game Saturday or Sunday?
Friday, Hawks. Sunday afternoon is Pelicans.
Okay. So a nice southern swing. Get some
1-1 seems like it would be good. 2-0, we're starting the hype machine, man.
Yeah. They need to get one of them. It's okay. I'm okay if they go 1-1. Getting 2 road games is tough. I think this is a tough matchup for they have had troubles with both of these teams when Zion plays. Like they beat the Pelicans last year without Zion. I think Zion does legitimately give Denver problems.
No, Aaron Gordon guarded him extremely well. And the one time we've seen him guard Zion, he played him extremely well. So I'm curious to see if that was an outlier or a thing.
These will be interesting. We'll see how they do. We're back tomorrow with another episode. We'll talk about some other things. I want to get into the MPJ conversation tomorrow. And over the weekend, we'll do a recap of the Hawks game and then get you set for the week starting on Monday, recapping the Pelicans game. Thanks for being with us, everybody. Glad to have you on board. Thanks for everybody in the comments for hanging out. Until next time, for Adam Mares, I'm Matt Moore.